I think it's time to have a little bit of a talk about men and depression. There seems to be this approach to depression that men just need to be more vulnerable, or any type of mental, emotional struggle. Well, men just need to be more vulnerable. They need to be more open with their emotions and all of that. And I connect this to depression because I think depression is one of those big ones for guys. And, story up front, dude, I dealt with depression for a long time, really severely. I still get it every once in a while that it'll come back and kind of punch me in the face, but nowhere near what it used to be. Now, there's a lot of things I've cleaned up in my life. Obviously, my faith has definitely helped me in all of that. But there's also some processes that I'll give maybe in a later video that I followed to help me overcome it. But I think a lot of times we hear men need to be weak, men need to be more open and vulnerable, and men need to be emotionally available, especially women in the whole therapy class, psychologists and therapists and counselors, and men just need to share their emotions, and they're not opening up, they're not going to therapy, and it's this hyper machoism that has destroyed them. It's toxic masculinity, all that. I don't believe that. I don't agree with that. Here's my take on it. As men, we are designed to be providers, protectors, leaders, however you want to say it. And I love looking at other cultures and civilizations to kind of get a sense of, okay, what's the commonality here? And when you look at cultures across time, across civilization, there are certain threads of commonality that connect between them. And so often it's a provider who pulls in resources and gives to family and community, protector, warrior class, protecting the tribe, the people, the culture. You can handle yourself physically, all that. And obviously, leadership, making decisions, leading forward, organizing things, managing things, all of that. So these commonalities definitely play a role in showing up. Now, how does that connect with this whole concept of men need to be more vulnerable? Think about it this way: ladies, therapists, men, this is why guys aren't opening up, because it shows weakness, because you're saying exactly the reason why guys don't do it. You're telling them become vulnerable. If you're going to be a protector, do you want to show your vulnerability to others, something that can be used against you? And so often guys will use this as a reason as to why they don't open up to their woman anymore, because ladies, guess what? If your guy opens up to you and he gets vulnerable with you, and then you turn around and use it against him, he remembers that. He remembers, there's a weakness that got used against me. That's a weapon formed against me. I won't do that again. It's basically like showing the gap in your armor to a person who becomes your enemy. They don't, they're not trustworthy with it, I should say. So when you're telling men you're all of the things that you do, you should therefore take your weakness and do that in front of other people. Guys are going, no, I'm good. And so this is for you guys. Okay, how do you deal with that, since what you're basically being told to do is go against your nature in taking down your strength and presenting your weaknesses in front of everybody and then hoping that it doesn't get used against you? I like to keep this analogy of ancient armor. So if you're a soldier and you're wearing ancient armor, you may have gaps in your armor, or maybe something's not fitting right. And so there's a gap where there shouldn't be. You trust your brother at arms to close that gap for you. And I think that's why brotherhood is so important. The guy next to you wants you to get through it, wants you to survive, just like you want him to survive. And when you think about warfare, there's a lot of soldiers who say, they weren't even fighting the war for America or whatever. They're fighting for the guy next to them. And I'm a firm believer that we need to build brotherhood as men. And in that brotherhood, you are presented with other guys who give you the opportunity to start to open up about what you've got going on in your life, because the consequences are real if it gets used against you. And people don't want to believe the whole status or hierarchy thing, but think about it. A guy is only worth the value of the status he presents. And I know guys like Andrew Tate talk about this and all that. And it's true in a social sense. Men don't have value or status in a social sense until they can show and prove they have value. And how do they do that? They produce. Whether they show they can protect, whether they show they can provide, whether they can show they lead, they show their value through the fruits of their labor. So why would a guy then put at risk his social value, his status, his hierarchical position by being vulnerable and showing his emotion, showing his weakness? Because he's just bearing himself out to lose status, hierarchy, or value to the world around him. And so this is why I think it's so important for guys to get together, 2, 3, 4, that kind of thing, and grow those bonds of brotherhood to where then you've got a guy next to you that you look, I'm really dealing with this. I need some help on this. And by all means, you should reach out to those guys. Now, the other part of the problem is we're not built to just sit in a circle and whinge about our problems. Some guys are, and some guys have no problem sitting in the group and doing that. And they're what you might consider very successful groups that's the method that they use. Sure, cool, go for it. But I think there's a lot of guys that look at that and now not for me, because it's very relational. It's very emotive. And those are more feminine centric mindsets or ways of bonding. However, take a group of guys, give them a heavy pack and make them ruck 5 miles, or take a couple of guys, make them pull a motor in one night. Take a group of guys, make them build a house. Start giving them an activity, an obstacle, a challenge to deal with together. And they end up building this bond or this brotherhood to where they can, while they're doing it, they can start to open up. Some of the best conversations I've had are in the midst of or immediately after the physical suck. And I've got guys around me that are dear brothers who I've built and forged a relationship with them precisely because of that adversity that we go through. And by all means, I run work groups, I run online programs and all of that. And I understand the conversation aspect. And you've got to be able to trust the wisdom that I might be able to give. And you can have those guys in your life. So that's another aspect of it, is find the guys with wisdom who they're there to help you grow and succeed. They're not there. They don't benefit from your status being knocked down. That could also be an avenue. But most importantly, especially the concept of depression, the voice you're going to hear is isolate. Don't tell anybody, bury it, and maybe you'll get through it. You'll get through it. You'll figure it out somehow. And sure, maybe you will. But it may take you 10 times as long as if you would have opened up and talked to your brothers at arms who are there to help you succeed, just like you're there to help them succeed. And if they're worth anything in stock, they're not going to use it against you. They're going to use it to help guide you. And that way, when they have a big issue, they know they can open up to you about it. So let's do away with this whole talk of guys need to be more vulnerable. No, guys need to build bond. They need to build brotherhood. And they need to help each other shore up their armor, to shore up their weapons, to make sure everything's running smoothly the way it needs to be, and helping them develop and be prepared for the next challenge or the battle. So I hope that helps, guys. Love y'all.